Alright, a couple months ago I fell down a rabbit hole of a certain game series called Danganronpa. I knew it existed for a while, but I never thought much of it until I decided to give it a shot. And I regret not playing it sooner. If you don't know what Danganronpa is, it is a murder mystery game where 16 students are locked in a school by a black and white bear, and the only way they can leave is by killing each other. It is an amazing game when it comes to its world building and its characters, and best of all, the plot. I just have to talk about it, so I'm going to do an ultimate ranking of every class trial from all 3 games and the Ultra Despair Girls chapters. Not only that, I will also be ranking the 2 arcs from the anime which came out, as well as the Kirigiri light novel series and Danganronpa Zero, as I have read both of them and I think they deserve their credit. Alright, with all the intro stuff out the way, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, and with no further ado, here is my ultimate ranking of every Danganronpa trial and anime and light novel series. Goodbye Despair is a game which is very weird to me. I know it is widely regarded as the best game of the 4, and while I do see where they're coming from, I do have a lot of gripes with the game. I do think that cast of characters are controversially good to me, but not amazing, and the chapters are overall more enjoyable, as you will see in this ranking, but I do have problems with their choices of a considered upgrade. And I do have to say that the first case of Goodbye Despair did not set a great standard for the entire game as a whole. I wouldn't say this case is bad per se, just bland. I know intro cases have a lot of expectations riding on them, having to introduce us to the cast, introduce the killing game, have an interesting case plot, and be easy to follow as a tutorial. So it makes sense that this case doesn't do the best in holding together, as it had a lot to cover, but it doesn't make it great. I think the best part of this case has got to be Nagito, and his introduction to him being a fucking crazy guy, but it doesn't save it. Victim was predictable to say the least, culprit wasn't as sad as it was supposed to be, just not great. I don't hate any case fully, but definitely this is by far the weakest case. Oh, Ultra Despair Girls. It is definitely regarded as the worst the franchise has to offer, and can't help but agree with it. It was definitely a very ambitious project that they tried to make, having the plot centered around the tragedy set up by the first and second game. But it does fail, as the plot was never fully explained, game mechanics bland and overdone, characters very concerning, and overall extremely boring and a chore to get through. It might come across as weird to put the 4th case of the game as the worst, but I can confidently say that this part of the game is by far the most tedious to get through. Navigating through the warehouse is extremely long and nothing of note happens, except...
Lover boy, certified pedophiles. That fuck 'em up. I'ma do my stuff. Why you trolling like a bitch? Ain't you tired? Trying to strike a chord, and it's probably A minor.
And while I do think Nagisa is one of the better warriors of hope, he doesn't do a whole lot for this case, and rather the game. I think the hate UDG gets is so much that I had to put it somewhere at the bottom of this list. Just like... Hey, remember when I said a while ago that I didn't like Despair Girls? Well, here's the first case of the game. It's funny that the bottom two cases' reasons for being so low is also the same reason why this case is this low, but you can't ignore it. I haven't talked much about Komaru as a character. I do think she is by far the worst protagonist of the franchise, with the ranking going something like this. And that's chalked up to her development as extremely forced and cringeworthy to get through kinda. Unlike protagonists like Makoto or Shuichi, where their development flows well with the story, Komaru's growth, while I do see what they were trying to do, it doesn't flow well at all. Oh yeah, I still have a case to talk about. Yeah, this case is boring. Warriors of Hope had a terrible introduction and made me want to question my life choices. Zerba Nagito was cool though. And the opening is intense to say the least, but still lacking. But now that we have the bottom three out of the way, it's time to get into the real meat of this ranking. All cases beyond this definitely deserve to have a second look at, in my opinion. Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony is without a doubt my favourite game of the series. It has the best cast of characters with none of them truly dislikable. The quality is by far an upgrade from the first two, and there is so much to offer and was explored with. I know a lot of people really hate V3 for very polar opposite reasons of mine, but I only see these flaws to an extent, and you'll see these reasons within this ranking. Despite this, I do feel like the second case of this game is definitely the worst. This case's murder bases around a magic show which the star Himiko Yumeno is giving. This game has a beast of the first case, so it does feel like huge whiplash going back into the traditional case standard, and that is probably why this case is here. The first half of this trial is definitely the worst part, having to establish to everyone that magic is not real, with Himiko just denying it while her lesbian laser just backs her. It's quite bad. I do think Himiko is an okay character who actually becomes likable, but you gotta wait a while for that. And Tenko, this is her at her worst, with her whole degenerate male shit being extremely annoying. And it doesn't help that the motive for the culprit is... What the fuck is a The motive as a whole had a lot of potential with it, spinning off the first game's video of their close ones, but instead switching the videos so you have to instead kill to see the video. But they should have done a lot more with it in my opinion. Also, Kurumi as a culprit became very obvious to me. I don't know about other people, it's probably because of my 20,000 hours into Ace Attorney that I have just developed a keen eye for spotting culprits and calling them. Nevertheless, it never came as a shock to me. Also, correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't Kurumi actually get away with the murder if she didn't move the body? Ryoma was literally in his room, and she had such a strong alibi for the crime, but she decided to go so over the top and move the body when she would have been safe if she didn't do that. Yeah, this case kinda sucks, but the execution is my favourite though. Trigger Happy Havoc may not be my favourite game of the series, but it is definitely the most impactful. Otherwise, there would have been no reason for me to continue with the series. It is definitely a certified hood classic, and none of the cases, I think in my opinion, are truly horrible. And I think the quality is better than Goodbye Despair, and the characters, while they may not be my favourite, they are the most memorable because of how moving they are with this series as a whole. However, if I had to pick the weakest case in my opinion, the fourth case of this game would definitely be the worst. Definitely contrary to popular belief, but I do think that this case doesn't land for me as it should have. This case hinges corely on the wrap-up on the case before it, where in its aftermath, we are revealed that Sakura Ogami was in fact the traitor within the group. This was amazing setup, and they could have done a lot with it, having Makoto question his judgments and being forced to withhold information to his friends. I think that which he specifically told Kyoko was a huge deal. So what do? Monokuma straight up dumps it on everyone that she is the traitor. What? All that tension is broken up in less than 30 minutes into the case. To their credit, it does work in the sense of having Sakura being conflicted by everyone because of her status as the traitor. But even then, it doesn't work as Sakura didn't do anything as the traitor, which just makes it look less like justified persecution and more just unjust racism. Like this guy, Hiro, high as fuck, couldn't even see that Sakura was just walking, minding her own business, and instead freaked out. Or even in Toko's sake, she just hid in the locker for no bloody reason and jumped Sakura. Also, Sakura's plan, while it was honourable, was terribly thought out. She chose 3 of the worst people to get involved with her suicide. She had the choices of the level-headed Kyoko, the wimpy Makoto, and her own friend, but she decided to choose the narcissistic sociopath, the DID serial killer, and the guy who's on a hell of a lot of drugs. The class trial itself isn't even amazing, with the only notable thing is how satisfying it is to prove Byakuya wrong, leaving him out of the loop for once. The best part of this case, however, is Hina, who you do feel extremely bad for, that her friend just committed suicide. By the way, who actually was surprised that her death was a suicide? Was I the only one who didn't figure it out, like, the moment we got it revealed to us that her corpse was just sitting there? So when it came to Hina's actions before and during the trial, I sure did not care. Okay, that was a bit harsh. I do feel a bit bad, but it didn't hit me as it should have. I'll give it credit where it's due, where that her death did cause a very hyped heel turn on Monokuma. But really, what exactly are they going to do? If they wanted to put an end to the killing game, they should have done it, I don't know, when everyone was here. I don't despise this case at all, but the plot was bland. Sakura's chivalry only gets it so far, and had a lot of missed opportunities. Rest in peace, Sakura. Guess what? Another Ultra Despair Ghost case! Trust me, this is the last one for a while, okay? This case is less story and more just shooting shit up. The child focused on is Jotaro, which I do think he has the funniest character out of the 5 of them, but by far the least standable to talk to. Navigating the subway is not the best pleasing thing, and the introduction to the rebels is underwhelming to say the least. But the reason why I have this case above 1-4 is because of Toku Fukawa. In the first game, she was quite irritating to talk to, and her inferiority complex, also fetish, is unnerving to say the least. However, UDG definitely makes her way more likable with how much growth she had in the first game and the amount of growth she has in this game. If Despair Girls did one thing right, it is definitely Toko and her character development. She literally made this game standable to play, as it actually felt she was the one speaking sound mind in that hectic hellhole. The fact that Komaru feels like she wants to give up at every front, and Toko simply is just disgusted by her weakness because it reminds her of her past self, is really good, and is why this case is high as it gets. Albeit I'm being a bit too generous. Also, Genocide Jack is fucking awesome. It does feel weird putting the first case of the entire series this high on the list, but also it is weird putting the first case of the entire series this low on the list. However, I do think that this case does an excellent job in its own right as the first case of Danganronpa. First of all, I do think that it is by all means the best when it comes to establishing the killing game to everyone, simply because of it being the first one. Second of all, I do think that the motive of this case is really good for a first motive, having people's past lives dangled before them and forcing them to kill each other if they want to see what happened to their people they care about outside the school. But really the best part and linchpin of this case has got to be Sayaka Maizono. Did you guys see that one video where this dude built a whole church dedicated to Sayaka?
Sayaka Maizono. We've gone everywhere, to a zoo, in a limo, multiple times to the mall, movie theater, ocean, pool, restaurants, and all of the above. And I may be her most dedicated fan, as it's a deep rabbit hole. A medieval chainmail with all the push-button pins that I've collected of her, which goes together with a sword and shield, which is entirely made out of her. But most importantly, I've turned my house into a church for Maizono, and this is what the outside of my house looks like. Besides
I don't think there is a single fan who dislikes Sayaka. The moment she recognizes Makoto, you instantly start caring for her, especially when it comes to the motive as her idol career is put into jeopardy and she tries to juggle her emotions as you comfort her and promise her to get out. And then she frames you for murder! The fact that the first victim of this case, and a character you thought you could trust most at this point, attempts to kill someone and frame you for the murder is the reason why this case is high as it is. It has a lot of messy parts, to say the least. Namely, it is extremely easy. People are stupid to think that writing on a wall is anything but a name, and you don't give the least care for the actual killer. Actually, on the second playthrough, you do have some sort of sympathy for Leon because he didn't want anything to do with it. Hold on a minute. Why did Sayaka choose Leon of all people? She had the choice of literally anyone to kill, even fucking Chihiro. But she decided, as a skinny, feeble girl, to kill a world record athlete. On second thought, maybe this case kind of blows. Despite this, I think this case is really good because of how much it carries for the rest of the game. Sayaka on death's doorstep could have written your name on the wall, decisively framing you as the culprit. But the fact that she wrote Leon's name instead makes you question, did Sayaka truly love you? Or did she just write the name out of spite of her killer, which lingers in your mind for the rest of the game? This type of thinking of an introduction case is amazing. I'm looking at you, Goodbye Despair. I think we hit a turning point in this list. I'm going to try to be more positive going forth. There will be a lot of problems, however these problems are less of a big deal for the most part, and the rest of these cases have a lot more to offer, and have at least one thing that is memorable. I say this, but I do have a lot of problems with the second case of Goodbye Despair. Danganronpa 2 has a lot of problems with it in my opinion, namely the motive of all the cases are less motives and more precarious situations which cause people to kill. And the motive of this case, Twilight Syndrome murder case, falls into this trap. Playing through this video game is quite unnerving and not in the good way. The characters are gaudy to look at and it displays the motive in a pretty shitty way. Also, I did not like the final parts of this trial, having to disprove a serial killer which has no other relevance to the plot and makes it feel that this game is just treading on old grounds. And the first half of this trial is also a drag. Having to prove the murder weapon is something completely unrelated to the actual plot. And Hiyoko is extremely annoying and irritating to listen to. I understand that pretty much her older sister has just died, but that doesn't excuse the Mikan abuse. Have you hung out with her? Her life is complete shit! Other parts of this case are good, however, like
turned around. Oh!
Disappointing. I thought if I came early, I'd be the first one to arrive.
Y'all ain't let me down yet! Y'all ain't let me down yet! Woo! And she was feeling me! Look at her! Look at her! That's Srry, bro! That's my girl, bro! I spit my game out of this episode, bro! This was the episode I spit my game at her! She's my girl! Oh my gosh! Thank you, Lord, for delivering me such an angelic presence into my life like her.
But where this case manages to scrape into this position is because of the tragedy of Fuyuhiko and Peko. As I mentioned, Twilight Syndrome was the motive which infers on how Fuyuhiko's sister was killed by the hands of Mahiro's friend and got away with it. This creates the perfect motive for Fuyuhiko, which is why Peko killed her. At simple instinct of being his personal bodyguard, she killed her. Her stature of being a simple tool to him, even though he didn't even want to kill Mahiru, he didn't even want to harm her. But being completely molded by the Yakuza just made Peko out of reaction wallop her over the head. Seeing the ending of this trial, while it is not the saddest in the series, it is among the saddest, and is why this case is high as it is. I know there are a lot of people who love this trial simply because of the ending. While I do understand that, and I think it's very warranted, it doesn't excuse the other flabby parts of this trial. But there's sexy Chiaki, so it's not that bad. I know that my take that V3 has the best lineup of characters is gonna get a lot of fans triggered, but I'll stand by this decision no matter what form of evidence you pull. And I think where most people will pull their efforts against me is the third case, Transfer Student Beyond the Grave. This case has a lot of messy parts with it, namely on the utilization of this case's motive being a revival of a dead student. I was very intrigued when this motive came out, questioning on how could such a thing even be achieved, let alone what it could mean for the game as a whole. We had the possibility for Kaede, Rantaro, or Kurumi to come back, 3 characters who would have good reason to come back to life. However, this case's culprit had nothing to do with this motive. We'll get to him later. I think where this case gets it scoffed at is the school council created by ultimate artist Angie Yonaga. Well, this is less of a school council and more of a cult dedicated to Atua.
Atua. Atua. Atua. Atua. Atua. Atua. Atua. Atua. Atua.
I know a lot of people don't like this, but I do because of how absurd it is, but also is somewhat realistic in some ways. Like, these children are stuck in this killing game, feeling like they have no such purpose, so it would be natural for them to do crazy shit like this. Similar to Lord of the Flies, if you've read that. This trial is very entertaining, thanks to Kokichi and Miu.
You and your fucking lies! Go sit in the corner and play with yourself!
Okay, I'll start right now.
Alright, so who's the asshole who set up this locked room mystery?
Miu, I can't hold it up anymore.
What's the matter? You going soft on me now?
Who made the locked room mystery doesn't matter, since anyone could have done it. Don't you even understand something as basic as that, you filthy cum dumpster?
Cum dumpster! Finally! Someone finally called me a cum dumpster!
Hey.
Also, this case redeems a lot of other characters which were previously not pleasant to interact to. I have already talked about Angie, but the fact that she becomes this much of a problem when the case prior she had nothing to do with the murder, despite how affiliated she was in, is really cool. As well as this, Tenko feels like she gets redeemed, despite her degenerate maleship still being corny as fuck. She does feel like a character who cares for people around her, which is something I can't say about other extremely annoying characters like Hyoko and Hifumi. But I think the true best part of this case is the killer Korekio. I really like Kyo's character. Or at least I used to. This case is definitely where he shines, as how convoluted his murder was, throwing us for a loop regarding the frequency of events. And his seesaw trick, yeah, it's a bit dumb, but I think it's standable for Danganronpa standards. Especially how there are cases above this that are more out of pocket. This case isn't higher simply because of how the messy parts are very messy, and Kyo's motive had no reason around the revival motive, and more about his Oedipal problems. Also, it suffers the same thing 3-2 had, that Kyo would have been safe if he didn't kill Tenko. I like to headcanon that Kyo was so proud about his seesaw trick that he just had to use it just to satisfy his OCD. Also, I felt like there were so many missed opportunities with this case, and they threw all forms of suspense and game building just to fit the Danganronpa formula. But nevertheless, I still think that this case is pretty standard, and Kyo is an unsettling villain. Fun fact, if you hang out with Kyo whilst playing as Kaede, Kyo offers her to become friends with his sister. And y'all already know what he meant by this. Now this is once again a little hot take, but is for good reason. Now the penultimate case for Trigger Happy Havoc is the most setup a case has for a final case than any fifth case in the series. It centers around
Mukuro Ikusaba.
It's quite short, especially for a penultimate case, and I wish I can place this higher, but really when it comes down to it, there isn't anything that's so eye-popping to me except for the class trial. Byakuya helping you out is now cool, as Sakura's death has actually made him an actual functioning being without making you want to punch him all the time. Only some of the time. I also like how everyone has just normalized Genocide Jack now, like it's just something they have to live with now. Also, I do have to say that Trigger Happy Havoc is the best when it comes to the building up of the school and making you feel you are getting close to the end of the killing game. Especially with the access to the morgue and the classroom detailing the biggest, most awful, most tragic event in human history. So why is this case so low? I wanted to put this higher, however the murder and plot of this case is almost next to nothing. It makes sense considering how it is truly solved in the final chapter of the game, but that doesn't help it. Investigating doesn't feel as entertaining as the others, especially with that fucking annoying plant reserve noise that plays over the cool new soundtrack. This trial is also quite dumb in how you have to prove to Hiro that Kyoko is not the one dead, when it's obvious as she's standing right there. This is where I feel a lot of people hate Hiro. And to their credit, I did as well. It's very annoying and tedious for the first time playing. But after playing the whole series and revisiting this part, it definitely makes you get a kick out of it and appreciate his trope as the comedic relief, unlike other comedic characters who also make it to the end. This guy is just so fake, dude. But apart from those gripes and this case being overall quite bland, it is very memorable in the final minutes as you decide to hold your tongue with regards to Kyoko having the possibility to enter the yard. As a result, you are the one voted, and for some reason it's correct. Kyoko's actions leading up to this case is beyond sus and keeps you hooked and hyped for the finale of the game. The ending is really good. and is amazing setup for the final case. Only if the case itself was good, however. Hey, this is a big question to all of you in the comments. Which do you prefer in a Danganronpa game? Actually, not just Danganronpa, any mystery fiction. A tragic culprit to take down, with their morals justifiable or reasonable, but still have to suffer the consequences, or a satisfying villain whose motives are pure evil and brings out nice clarity now that they are gone. I say this as the third case to trigger Happy Havoc is the first satisfying culprit that the series has to offer. Cases 1 and 2 had tragic villains, with Leon being the first culprit and Nondo having a motive, which we'll get to later. But this culprit, Celestia Ludenberg, has a motive of pure selfishness. The case itself is definitely lacking, to say the least. I was initially going to put this case much lower than 5-5 and even 2-2. However, I do feel like credit is due. This case is the first double kill, which already gives it merit, especially as it killed Hifumi, who I don't like, and Taka, who I actually liked until this case. Where this case seems to falter is the build-up with the introduction of Alter Ego, an AI of Chihiro created by Chihiro, before she got. While I do like how she helps you in providing key information, but let's just say that it is terribly executed because of these two victims. For Taka's sake, I feel like his whole Ultra Instinct transformation is very dumb, on how it felt like they were setting him up to go all the way with how close he was to Mondo. And Hifumi, I don't hate him as much as other characters. However, let's just say his whole AI love stuff did not age well when this game was released, considering that the stuff you can do with AI now. But the reason why I have this case as high as it is because of Celeste. Celeste, I think, is an excellent, satisfying culprit to take down. Very obvious to me, but from the start, with her whole condescending nature, her appearance as the ultimate gambler making her feel like she's above everyone else, and her breakdown and execution makes her one of my favourite characters. I just love on how she was able to manipulate the victim so easily because of the desperation for Alter Ego, claiming in Hifumi's sake that it was an act of chivalry. While it is obvious to players as she is executing the plan, it is very thought out, and blaming it on Hero because of how he is just too dumb to use basic logic shows her perception of people is more than just two-dimensional. Also, I mentioned this already, but amazing fourth case setup. Hey, this is the first of the two anime entries on this list, and the first one might get a bit of a crowd. Overall, I really like the Danganronpa anime, End of Hope's Peak. I think it's the best form in which expands on the Danganronpa world, more than Ultra Despair Girls could ever. There are two arcs in this anime, excluding Danganronpa the animation, which I won't be talking about because it just covers the first game and nothing else. The weaker of the two, in my opinion, is in fact the future arc, which may shock a lot of you. Don't think this arc is bad, however. It centers once again around Makoto Naegi, who has fully grown up, as well as everyone else. It is amazing to see these characters like Hina and Kyoko all grown and have more personal interactions, that which the games haven't or couldn't show. For example, on how Kyoko talks about Makoto, claiming on how much hope he has given her and impacted on everyone, especially during that final class trial. Or the closeness between Hina and Kyoko, despite their stark differences, simply because of the killing game. And let's not forget about good old Yasuhiro.
Which one of them do you think has blood on their hands?
Poor Hero, man. This anime also introduces some new characters who all play very key roles in the world building, as they're all part of Future Foundation. However, none of them really leave a huge impact, and it's really up to the Despair arc of the anime to actually flesh out these characters. Yeah, that's one thing I don't like about this arc. For some dumb reason, they decided to have a whole killing game again, but instead of having class trials and solving murders, it's just people losing their fucking minds for no reason. Like, I get what they were trying to do, I think. They were trying to make it so there was corruption within Future Foundation, especially with Makoto's actions with the remnants of Despair in Game 2. But even still, a lot of the characters' motives feel a bit off to me, such as the leader of the Future Foundation, Kyosuke Munokata, thought he knew the idea of hope better than Makoto and just wants to kill him, even though he has no actual reason to kill Makoto or hate him. Especially with how he himself was a big reason why the tragedy even happened. And even Meteorize's motive at the end to put that whole video which captured everyone so Despair wouldn't spread doesn't sit right with me, even factoring in the Despair arc. Also, I understand why they kept Kyoko alive at the end, even though they were clearly setting her up to die. But I still think she should have died if they weren't going to make her relevant in V3. They probably just wanted to keep the Nigiri ship alive in canon. A lot of these newly introduced characters feel very washy, especially on how fucking graphic they fight, even for Danganronpa standards. Just take a look at this.
You know absolutely nothing, old man. You don't know me, and you don't know what I have in store.
But the characters we were already introduced are what makes this high as it is. Heck, even Kamaru feels more of a character that she was supposed to be like, and even Monica. Overall, I think the Future arc is amazing in the terms of world building, but it is 100% lacking in development. But hey, it's the weaker half for a reason. I might get cancelled for this. Hey, so the third case of Ultra Despair Girls is yet another iconic case to the series, but definitely not in the good way. One thing I see a lot of criticism with Ultra Despair Girls is how off-putting it is. The character interactions are very fucked up and unsettling, and not in the good way at all. Just the interactions between the Warriors of Hope whilst that draining, awful, grueling carnival music plays while they talk about so happily about killing adults is something that is just never pleasant to watch. However, that was the intended purpose. They were never meant to be lovable like the students in the mainline games because of how broken they are. Their attempts to salvage joy in despair makes them this way, as that is what they were taught. And I think the best representation of that brokenness is with Kotoko, the little ultimate warrior? Was that her ultimate? Kotoko's trauma is by far the most fucked up out of all of them. I don't want to go into specifics because I don't want this video to get age restricted or taken down, but let's just say the trauma she went through would even make Diddy think that was going too far. Just her mother's note alone just hits you with so much disgust. And let's not forget about the manipulation which Monica did on her with regards to her brokenness.
Blind to their foolishness, ugliness, noxiousness, bad smell, boringness, to their own damnation. Even blind to the fact that they scarred Kotoko like this. It's okay. Monica won't be gentle. Demons are filthy, smelly, ugly chunks of meat, more worthless than dirt, and disgusting. Filthy demons deserve a disgusting, filthy death.
So is that why this case is high as it is? Kinda, yeah. Out of all the children, she feels the most justified for the adult killings. Not like it's an excuse by any means, but still is something out compared to everyone else. I think she is the best representation of actually being hurt and traumatized. Just with the word gentle being a huge trigger word for her.
How she convinced you that she was some sweet, gentle girl, but...
Gentle? Please! Stop with the gentle! When they're gentle, I get all flinchy! No, I don't want gentle! Please stop! Anything but gentle! Please, no, stop with the gentle!
Also, this case is definitely the best when it comes to pacing. UDG, despite being a shooter game, is very slow, and nothing feels intense at all, which is strange considering on how this is during the tragedy, and there's people just dead everywhere. Being able to play as Genocide Jack going to save Komaru from... is not something I actually expected to enjoy? Is that okay to say? Actually, that's a lie. I don't understand why they decided to have the damage you take, or Kotoko takes, in the fight to be parallel to how much clothes they wear. It's just unnecessary, and I don't want to be seeing that shit. But really, this case is high as it is, because of the end of the case. It kind of made me like UDG. I know, scary idea. But being honest, if the fourth case wasn't as bad as it was, I think I would have been more of an apologist to Despair Girls than a hater. It took the unhinged aspects of the tragedy and actually make you feel the way it was set up to be like, which is why this case deserves to be as high as it is right now, because of how it made the aspects of Despair Girls actually work. Remember that during the tragedy, things like this was happening. Kotoko is a very sympathetic character, and yeah, this chapter is extreme, but that is what UDG was supposed to be like. Intense. This case.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it after all.
I think this is another turning point in this ranking. From now on, the cases above have a lot more positives than negatives in my opinion, and they are definitely some of the better cases this series has to offer. I should also add that this ranking is completely my opinion, and should be by no means taken as fact. I say this, but we have perhaps the most controversial case in this entire series, the ending of Killing Harmony. There is so much to unpack with Goodbye Danganronpa that I won't be able to cover nearly everything I want to say about this case. However, I'll try my hardest to explain everything I can. If I could place this case twice on this list, I would place it both as my least and my favourite case, because truthfully, it is able to meet all those ends. Coming off that wild ride of a fifth case, Kibo has decided to go full on Terminator and destroy everything on sight, simply just to end the killing game. I know a lot of people feel like that this is a stupid of a heel turn, but I think it works fine. This case definitely makes you feel like that this is the end game now, and how you begin to investigate all areas previously unexplorable, such as the secret room and Rantaro's research lab. And we'll get to Shukxchi later, but for now I'll say this is where his growth as a character is at its best, far beyond any other protagonist. Sticking with Rantaro for a bit, we get to see his true intentions and his ultimate talent, which he never got to tell us because he died first. Ironically, it's the ultimate survivor. Hilarious! Needless to say that apparently he was part of a previous killing game and he came back to apparently win again? Also hilarious! Rantaro for the most part is a very unknown character. He has one of the best designs and his presence is well known, but he definitely feels as if he ought to play more of a major role in the grand scheme of things. Similar to Junko. But that's not the only thing. We get to investigate the secret room in the library, a thing that has haunted us throughout this entire game because of Kaede and her attempt to expose and kill the mastermind alongside us. Speaking of Kaede, it is proved that she was framed. That's right, the first case of the entire game is actually a farce. While our girl intended to kill Rantaro, she failed, and so the mastermind had to personally kill them and made it look like it was her. You do get the feeling that something was not right in that first case, especially how little the moving bookshelf actually had in the murder, and we saw that shelf close as we walked in. Side note, can I just say that Rantaro must have been the most confused character, like ever. Just think about this. This guy wakes up with 16 students in a killing game, has sudden extended knowledge about what's happening, which he has no reason why he knows. He gets a message from him to open a secret room in a library, sees a random shot put ball fall next to him, left clueless, and then dies. Like, I feel sorry for the guy, dude. This brings us to the final trial, which I have to say would be my absolute favorite trial in the series. Instead of having Monokuma bring us this final trial, we bring the final trial to him. This is amazing growth for Shukxchi, who started off not even wanting to participate because of exposing the culprit, but now is willing to do anything to bring this game to an end. This retrial of Chapter 1's trial is so amazing to piece together because it explains and covers up all loose ends of that case, and how desperate the mastermind was in continuing in with the killing game. Also, can I just say, I love the stark differences of each Danganronpa protagonist. You got Makoto, soft boy, never wants to tread on people's shoes. Normally leaves it to his stoic, emotionless girlfriend to do the talking, while he just shows evidence. Then you got Haiji Memes, who has more edge and can apply pressure, but is normally quiet for the most part and doesn't run the trail unlike Nagito or even Chiaki. Komaru, we don't talk about Komaru. Then we got Shukxchi, who not only carries the class trials, not only does he get people to be quiet while he fucking cooks, but the moment he exposes that Kaede is not the culprit, he just goes.
And you want to tell us this game is fair? That there are rules? That's all bullshit! This game makes no sense at all. I won't forgive them. I'll never forgive them for breaking the rules and killing Kaede. So cruel. I'll never forgive them. And I will avenge Kaede. I swear on her kindness and her love and her grave that I will avenge her.
Shukxchi, in my opinion, is by far the best protagonist. His growth and how differently he thinks and talks makes him stand out, making him way more likable. A thing that they tried to do with Komaru but felt too forced, while Shukxchi flowed really well with the story of the game. I'm saying all this because this is where all my good things about this case come to an end. And now it's time to talk about this controversial ending which destroyed the whole franchise. Oh boy! On a lesser note, I do like Tsumugi Shirogane as the mastermind. I like how hidden she was able to be kept, and how it felt like it was still a good twist due to how adamant are thinking that this mastermind would be Junko again for the 53rd time. And you know what? It is like that as she reveals to be Junko Enoshima. Though for some annoying reason she keeps changing between Tsumugi and Junko like every second, and even when she has a sprite which makes her talk like Tsumugi, she still does this. It's very infuriating. And now comes the greatest twist in the entire series, that being everything has been a fictional lie. Everything. From Hope's Peak, the tragedy, UDG, everything. I have no idea how to feel about this twist. It is a twist for sure, but a twist like that? This is funny enough, the most Danganronpa thing to do, but really, I don't know about the fact that they just discredited and destroyed all of the world building. I would say that this twist is terrible if I didn't play it for a second time. If you have a rerun of the case, the way they relay out this twist is actually really well thought out than you might think. And in honesty, it does an amazing job in laying out the message that the developers wanted to make. Fiction can change everyone's lives. They knew exactly what they were doing when coming up with this twist for an end, and it would mean for the whole franchise. And to their credit, it did give the impact that they were going for. Despair that Danganronpa fiction is gone, which I honestly gotta respect, and brought great weight into many different Danganronpa projects and fictions which fans create. Now comes the second act of this case, being them to be forced to play the killing game for the sake of TV. It makes all the setup from this game, from the ultimate hunt to the asteroids destroying the world, it's all non-canon now, and it's just fiction. Again, it's much better on a second playthrough of the game, as now you have recovered from that dumb twist. You do actually appreciate it a lot. Though I do wish that they used the lore they set up throughout the game, as that would have made a better ending to the series in my opinion. And remember how I said that Shukxchi had so much growth as a character? Well, they really did botch up him coming full circle and saving everyone like Makoto or Haji memes. This is because due to the shock, you stop playing as Shukxchi and switch roles to instead play as Kibo for a portion of this trial. Now, I don't have anything against Kibo. If anything, I think he's a really interesting and really good character. But from him going rogue in the beginning, and now you are suddenly playing as him to bring hope to everyone, pretty much steals everything Shukxchi was set up for. Needless to say, you have to go and do a rebuttal showdown against him, and suddenly you just go back to playing as him like nothing happened. This trial made me feel very mixed, as they really were hyping up Shukxchi's growth and his resolve for carrying out Kaede's will. But then you have to play against him and go against everything he was set up for. And to even add more insult to Shukxchi's injury, you go on to play as both Maki and Himiko, only to just agree with him, a thing that Shukxchi could have done himself by contradicting their claims. It would have made Shukxchi have some sort of ending to his growth, whilst doing the exact same thing. And I do like how Shukxchi decides to reject both hope and despair, but it never clicked for me, even when you decide to stop playing the minigames such as Hangman's Gambit. Then you have the ending where Tsumugi has the worst execution in the series. So many people love to trash on Mikan's execution, but I see people never talk about how Tsumugi's one is just her getting crushed under rubble. And for some reason Shukxchi, Maki and Himiko somehow survive and can leave the game, even though they're fictional characters, but also not. It's like the developers all watched Truman Show before writing this game and went, hey, I like that. I love V3. I am a full apologist and defender of the game. And as a critic, it is a very clever way and very interesting way to end a series. But as a player, this ending is very, very infuriating. I'm not particularly mad about the twist, but rather on how they handled it when it came to the ending. It made zero sense and gave Shukxchi a disappointing ending to his character arc. If the developers said upfront that V3 will be the final game, then I would definitely enjoy this ending a lot more. But the fact that they made a sorry excuse of a grey area making Shukxchi say, hey, it could all come back, because what's real? Who the fuck knows? I don't, you don't, and I don't think SpikeTune Software does. This case is only high as it is because I love its setup and the case as a case. But as a finale, it is one of the most infuriating endings I have seen in a while. Gege might actually have some competition with this one. I think it is no surprise that Kyoko Kirigiri is one of the most beloved characters in the series. She is the main advisor for Makoto and love interest. She has one of the best ultimate abilities, her backstory is depressing, and her overall emotionless persona somehow speaks volume to the player. However, after Trigger Happy Havoc, she became less and less relevant until the anime, where her fake death was over-exaggerated. Then she kind of fucks off after that, despite Shukxchi being sort of a spiritual successor to her. So, color me surprised when I find out that there was a published light novel of her. Danganronpa Kirigiri was initially Japan exclusive, however has been fan translated for us to read, and I love it. It acts as like a prequel to Trigger Happy Havoc, as we are in person of Yuri Samidare, a detective in the same school as Kyoko, where they have been intertwined into a criminal cult organization known as the Crimes and Relief Committee, who has built this game known as the Black Challenge, a sort of opportunity for victims of crimes to have their way of getting back at true culprits who have wronged them. This is an extremely interesting concept, which I dare not spoil, as I know only a fraction of the Danganronpa fandom know of its existence, and a few fraction have actually read it. I will say, however, that I highly recommend reading this 7-volume series, especially if you're a fan of Kyoko, as it adds huge depth to her already likable character and backstory, which also includes a huge twist, which again, I dare not spoil. This series would be higher if it wasn't for these specific circumstances. Huge thanks to the fan translator, I believe it's Magic on Reddit, for allowing us to read this. And because of you, and because of you being able to publish this, I think it deserves a ranking on this list. This is gonna come as an extremely hot take, but I actually like the third case of Goodbye Despair. I know GD has a huge issue with the motives of each case, and this one might be the worst in the series, being a disease that is spread across the island, which also didn't age well considering real life circumstances. And also this case has the most obvious culprit aside from 11037, because of how this motive narrows it down to literally one person. Also, the annoying bad people of the GD cast are at their worst, such as Hiyoko Sayonji. I know she is universally hated, but I can't deny that she is by far my least favourite character. More than...
Fouls. That fuck 'em up. I'ma do my...
As well as how they tried to make a funeral and make you feel sorry for Mahiru when I really couldn't give two shits about, especially with how she was the one truly in the wrong for Twilight Syndrome. And her whole sexist attitude is not funny and just drags her character down. As well as how the build-up of this case I could not care for. The GD cast might be my least favourite because of how 2D some of them are, compared to Trigger Happy Havoc's cast. Needless to say that the murder of this plot is very predictable the more you investigate, and the execution is widely known as the most underwhelming. So it should be by all means be set up as a bad case, one of the worst. So why is this case so high? Well, it's got to do with the killer, Mikan Sumigi, let me make this clear. I am a certified Mikan stan. If you're Team Hiyoko, call yourself part of the ops. I think Mikan's character is amazing, with her timid attitude being more engaging compared to Chihiro, and her inferiority complex way better done than Toko. And she actually helps out a lot in trials, giving important information about the body which Monokuma files wouldn't highlight. And her breakdown in the trial is one of the greatest.
Huh? Is that all you can say? So in the end, you're all just a bunch of bullies, huh? Justifying your actions with fancy words. Making excuses for why it's not really your fault. Everyone always treats me like that. Always. It's all her fault. She's the one with the problem. I'm done with that. You hear me? I'm done!
Hey, Mikan!
It's not fair. It's not fair. 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 Not fair! Why won't you forgive me? If you did something wrong, you'd forgive yourself right away!
But honestly, the best thing Mikan did, which is why this case is so high, is because she killed two of the worst characters that were alive at that point. Let me make this clear. After the first two cases being as bad as it was, I was starting to lose my patience with this game, with how characters were either cheap copies of previous characters, annoying to breathe towards, or inconsistent weirdos. I was not liking this game going into the third case, but that is mainly because of Hiyoko and Ibuki. I already established my distaste for Hiyoko, but what is a hot take is that I think Ibuki is one of the worst characters in the series. Where many comedic relief characters such as Hiro and Gonta actually have links and relevancy to each case, Ibuki doesn't do shit. Literally, for a character to have one of the best designs and a personality which should be lovable, she does not do anything. The one thing I can think of that she has relevancy is in Twilight Syndrome, but she isn't even wholly part of it, and she's just some irrelevant bystander. If we take other third case victims such as Hifumi, Taka, and even Angie, all of them have relevancy to the game's plot at one point, where it is either like making alter ego relevant, creating an invasive culprit which plays into the case's motive, or even just going Ultra Instinct because of a friend's death. At least all of them play a key role in the game. All Ibuki does is just play her shitty music. Like, if you take Ibuki out of the game, literally everything would be the same. Which is why I'm glad she died. Just think about how unserious the fourth case would be if she was still alive. It is because of Mikan that I actually began to like Goodbye Despair, as all the characters coming off it are all light and play a key role in the game. And while I did trash on the case's plot for being obvious, I have to say that it is an extremely well-planned murder, which she almost gets away with if she kept her mouth shut. And her reverting back to a remnant of despair is amazing foreshadowing. If Mikan didn't do what she did, I'll be honest, all the cases of Danganronpa 2 would be much lower than they are. If you don't know, every fourth case of each Danganronpa game has a unique gimmick to them. Where the third case always kills two characters, the fourth case always has a unique terrain to the murder, which makes it more interesting. For example, in Sakura's case, it was that locked room mystery, and in UDG, it was that terrible, grueling warehouse that you have to get through, my god. However, there are two instances which they work really well, and one of these is in V3. I was debating the placement of this case, the case after this, and the case after that, because of how unique each one of these are. So just know that this case deserves to be much higher than it is right now. That being said, it revolves around the Neo World program, a callback to Goodbye Despair, and how they are simulated in a game built by second best girl, Miu Iruma. Miu is a fan favourite among the community, which honestly makes sense, as her dirty jokes, unlike Hifumi, Soda, Kotoko, and even Teru, Miu's jokes land way more, and it flows extremely well with each scenario, unlike the others where they just say it, and you are left saying to your screen, "Dude, shut up, man." Miu has way more to her character, with her cocky but frail personality unlike the others. As I mentioned, Miu created the Neo World program, which she attempts to exploit in order to get away with murder. She attempts to use this program as a way of killing Kokichi Oma, a character who has repeatedly trashing on her, whilst also manipulating the rules of the program to give herself an alibi for the murder. And unlike a certain case which we haven't got to, the Neo World program is nice to look at, with all their chibi avatars giving Animal Crossing vibes. I love it so much. The building of this case is also great, as it doesn't feel as far-fetched, as you are able to predict the full secret of the program without leaving yourself confused. Where this case gets this high, however, is because of the confliction of this trial between Kaito and Kokichi. I haven't talked about them yet because I want to save them for their respective case. However, denying their relevancy in this trial would be a crime. This case fully cements the love Maki has for Kaito, which you can't help but adore, especially at the end of this case. Again, we'll get to them later. But with Kokichi, it does feel a bit odd on how malevolent he becomes between this case and the last one. Not saying he was never evil to begin with, but where in 3-3 he would just white lie and be a prankster to everyone, Kokichi here goes on full-on Joker. As a way of protecting himself, Kokichi goes to Monokuma and strikes a deal with him that he should put the secret of the outside world in the Neo World program, in exchange of making the game interesting. Even for Kokichi, this already feels like a stretch to him as a rival. Even Nagito wouldn't do that. And the things he manipulates here just give nothing more but bullshit. Gonta Gokuhara, a character who would never hurt a fly and tries his absolute best to be a gentleman, is manipulated as Kokichi feeds him the secret of the outside world, manipulating him to kill Miu, and the fact that he doesn't even remember killing her because he can fumble the plugs before going in. It's just sad. It's just heartbreakingly sad. This case is also the most conflicting to Shuichi. Debatable from this one and the first case, due to how he is forced to go against Kaito's beliefs, believing everyone to find the culprit. One thing I like about V3 is how they acknowledge Shuichi's abilities in the class trial. So there is a forced pressure upon him to reveal the truth. But where Kaito comforts him that he shouldn't carry the burden all by himself, Shuichi wants to believe that. But what happens when the true culprit is someone that is impossible to not believe? Also, remember how I said Kokichi's jump of prankster to mastermind was significant? Well, this is especially for the end of the class trial, as we notice that he lacks any form of remorse for what he did to Gonta. And I know this is huge setup for the next case, but I do feel like there was a huge missed opportunity where Kokichi could have had a boy who cried wolf story, where nobody would believe him that Kokichi was going to die to Miyu's hands. So he only turns to the one person that would actually listen to him, that being Monokuma. That's the only gripe I have with this case. Everything else seems to flow really well, and it's not any higher simply because I think the cases above are simply just better. Boy's Life of Despair is definitely one of the most iconic cases in the entire franchise. After the first case of this game, which I thought was great, I never thought that the second case would live up to that standard, let alone exceed it. This case has some of the most iconic moments in the entire series, as this is where the characters are overall fleshed out a lot more. One was about establishing Makoto. This case was about establishing everyone else, especially the important ones. It begins Byakuya Togami's jerk arc, as he begins to be a complete dipshit to everyone, and actually find pleasure in the killing game. Just that scene alone in the library is so iconic, as he acts like he's the fucking honored one. And the shit this guy does in this case alone is fucking amazing. Bro really decided to tamper with a crime scene, making it look like a famous serial killer is amongst them, and killed the victim. And it almost works. Let alone, he did all this, all to make the killing game interesting. And you know what? He isn't even the best part of this case. That award goes to this famous serial killer that was framed. Genocide Jack. Toko Fukawa from the start was extremely unlikable with how much of an inferiority complex she had, and how irritating she is to talk to. But the addition of Genocide Jack makes her amazing and way more interesting. The absurd concept of a character who not only has dissociative identity disorder, let alone has one of the personalities being a mass maniac who is hilariously pleasant to listen to and not even be the true culprit, is a mix that shouldn't work, but not only works, but simultaneously created one of the most iconic characters in the entire series. And let's not forget about the true victim and culprit of this case. Two characters which you never expect to be involved. Chihiro Fujisaki is a very meek character who attempts to better himself despite his flaws and his decision to embrace his vulnerability. Likewise, Mondo is such a lovable guy. I know people think he is a lesser Byakuya in some sense, but I think that's totally wrong. Mondo is amazing with how honorable he is, and he's such a bro, even though he is part of a biker gang. What makes this case even more amazing is how this is the first case where it has duality motifs in them. Because of this case's motive, Chihiro tries to compensate for his secret and pulls the strength to face his denial. Seeing how strong he is, with despite such a heavy burden, Mondo is jealous, hence the killing. It clearly shows there is a fine line between physically strong and mentally strong. And this killing game is not just a test of strength, but also a test of will as well. This is an amazing case, with how it establishes the character building. Though it is not perfect, I do have a few problems with it, namely on how slow it is in building up to the murder. Not as bad as 1-3, but still a big drag. And while I did just glaze about Byakuya, I do think they did his dickish behaviour maybe a tad too much. Nevertheless, this is an amazing way on pushing on with DR1. And what is so crazy? This isn't even the best case of the game. So this is the final anime entry on this list, and this is with no doubt, I like the second half of the End of Hope's Peak anime, the Despair arc. I mentioned this in the Future arc, but the anime does an amazing job in fleshing out returning characters. And this is no different in the Despair arc, where many characters which I couldn't care less for actually have more character and are more likable. Do you want to hear a little secret? I did not care for Chiaki Nanami. Nanami? But I thought for the longest time she was nothing more than a knockoff Kyoko. But because of the Despair arc, she was made more of a likable character with how her interactions with Hajime are adorable, and her being the cause of the class becoming the remnants of despair due to her death is just heartbreaking. And because of this, a certain case, which we haven't got to yet, wouldn't be as high as it is. This isn't the only good thing which the Despair arc does. It pretty much presents us the lead up to the tragedy, and how Junko was able to cause this using the technology of Mitarai, the ultimate animator. Mitarai and Yukizome are amazing additions to the story, with how they both feel like they belong so well with the other characters, something that couldn't be said for the future arc. Yukizome just works extremely well off every character, with her persistent and bubbly personality, and she really brings everyone together, like how she consoles Nagito that he does belong in the class. By the way, it is hilarious on how, when he isn't corrupted by despair or drunk off hope, he is still unhinged. Bro really decided to blow up the fucking school just so his friends don't have to do an exam. As well as how meeting Makoto is like finally seeing God to him. I love this series so much. And Mitarai's story is just so sympathetic, with how Junko manipulated him into creating the despair-inducing videos. Also, Imposter Byakuya is such a fucking homie. Like, you never expect it, but he's a G. I hear that the Despair arc has bad writing, but I couldn't disagree anymore. It uses all the elements set out by Goodbye Despair, from the reserve course to the Kamakura project, and links it all in a way which is believable. Remember when I mentioned that the GD cast was my least favourite? I know that is really gonna sting for a lot of fans, especially when I mentioned that the V3 cast is my favourite. My reasoning behind this is because without factoring in the Despair arc, most of the GD cast were very two-dimensional, which was fine for the early parts of the game, but progressing more and more, they become nothing more than just tropes, and it didn't feel like they were real people. To take an example, Kazuichi Soda was a character I really liked in 2-1, 2-2 and 2-3, but going into Case 4, his character becomes nothing more than a construct of a simp. He made the trials going forth worse, as he didn't contribute to anything but pester Sonia. V3 solves this issue, in my opinion, by playing favourites. It was obvious from Kaede's death that the characters that were going to be important was Kaito, Maki, Kokichi and Shuichi. V3 playing the favourites sounds extremely bad for the cast as a whole. And you'd be right on some parts. However, the fact that the non-plot armor characters have lesser screen time actually helps in the grand scheme of things, as only their good side is shown to the player. Just think about how bad the 5th case of V3 would be if someone like Angie was there instead of Himiko. Anyways, that's my reasoning why I think the V3 cast is the best, as it doesn't need to rely on a whole other form of media to make characters feel more real and fleshed out. However, for this entry, it makes it have even more credit, as it redeemed the DR2 cast for me. I will never get tired of Nekomaru shitting down the school. One of the best parts of a Danganronpa class trial in my opinion, which other mystery games fall short of, is presenting the secret trick of a murder in a way which makes sense to the player. Where other games such as Ace Attorney, you get the basic gist of the murder plot, some are heavily overcomplicated, which isn't the case for most Danganronpa cases. And the ones that are complicated, they're presented in a way which the player is able to digest. This is said because the case Do Robot's Dream of Clockwork has in my opinion the best representation of a case having a complicated scenario for a murder. This case revolves around everyone being trapped in a funhouse, which Monokuma tricked all of them coming in. What is special about this funhouse is that it is separated into 2 sections with one connecting point. However, the layout of the funhouse itself is a twist, as the 2 sections we ought to think are opposite to one another are in fact on top of one another. The way you build up this secret, in my opinion, is one of the best in this series. Also, this is actually the first time Goodbye Despair gave it an actual motive compared to all other ones previously. It's still a circumstantial scenario, but it is by all means a motive, and a pretty good one as well. Monokuma pretty much restricts everyone from food and freedom from the funhouse, unless if somebody gets killed. An excellent motive, as it places a timer on everyone rather than a select few characters, like Twilight Syndrome and the Despair Disease. Also, this case has some of the greatest lines in the entire series.
Body, you could find parts you can use. Oh my fucking god. Are you saying we should use parts for our dead friend? It's called recycling! It's a much better alternative than disposing it with the rest of the junk, right? Oh.
If I recall, an octagon is a shape with 8 sides, right? I didn't expect you to know that. For a substitute reserve course student, you're quite knowledgeable.
It's not? Are you saying that Grape House is merely an illusion spell cast by Monokuma's cursed eye? That's right. You've seen it clearly. Because I, the one who has claimed dominion over evil, am the ultimate weapon. I am he who cuts the insolent catalyst which flows out from the chaos with the sword of victory. It's only fitting that I deserve to be called the ultimate weapon.
No, you are far greater than the ultimate weapon, since you wield your 4 dark devas of destruction.
I see.
The entrance fee is the blood of a virgin. I shall offer up your blood as tribute.
Oh my god! Oh, that is a shame. Seems my blood cannot be used as the entrance fee.
Oh!
Kidding me?
But what I think is the best part of this case is the investigation segment. It's weird having an investigation sequence is the best part, but the reasoning behind this is because for a portion of this investigation, you're not playing as Hajime, you play as Nagito. This is an amazing opportunity, being able to read his thoughts and what goes on through his mind, which is made even more potent as you go through the final dead room, an escape room in the funhouse, which holds the secret to the whole school trip and the Future Foundation. This leads to one of the most amazing scenes in this entire series, as Nagito plays Russian roulette on extreme difficulty, only removing 1 bullet. Needless to say, this is also where he begins his shift from a hopium maniac that loves everyone to a hopium maniac that hates everyone with a spiteful passion. It is due to him discovering the truth of the school field trip by completing the final dead room, which infuriatingly ends his play segment right before you read the file. This is extremely contrasting, as it was Nagito's whole resolve that he wishes everyone to achieve hope, or some shit like that. So for him to make this heel turn during the class trial and end the investigation leaves you with so many questions. He even goes to lengths as to do the whole closing argument for you because of how fed up he is with Hajime. In addition, I do like how you are managed to pin Gundam as the killer by turning his whole alibi against you. It's weird because his breakdown is both satisfying and tragic. Gundam and Nekomaru pretty much sacrificed themselves, allowing everyone to leave the funhouse and not die of starvation. But is it also satisfying as Gundam decided that he ought to try to get away with the murder by creating that alibi and messing with the clocks? There are some problems with this case as well though, namely that the funhouse is eye-bleeding to look at and the whole fruit theme is very tacky. Also, while I do like Kazuichi Soda, I really do, he's very based and his jokes land most of the time. This is definitely him at his worst, as he drags down the whole trial with his simping for Sonia, being extremely unnecessary at times, and for literally no reason. Also, I prefer Gundam X Sonia anyway, because I headcanon that Gundam has autism. Because he's Gundam. but I really love this case, and how it manages to set up the GD's 5th case up so well with how Nagito's sudden bitchiness is remarkable. I was debating on having this lower, and maybe even lower than 3-4, but I feel like it does deserve all the credit it gets. We all know that this too must be the will of causality. Hey, this is the second and final entry of a light novel here, and oh boy, do I have a lot to say about this one. Danganronpa Zero is, for those who don't know, a light novel which sets during the despair arc of the anime, and pretty much leads off from the whole killing game incident, which was used to corrupt good old emo Haiji memes. What I like about this story is that it is in its own story, but unlike the Kirigiri light novel series, this one is much more tied to the story, as it takes place during Junko's rise to power.
Kamakura, yes, queen!
Speaking of Junko, let's talk about all the new characters introduced exclusively here. I didn't say this during the Kirigiri segment, but I wasn't a huge fan of the main character of that series, Yui Samidare, as she felt a bit overly nice to Kyoko, which, I mean, yeah, it's Kyoko, who doesn't love Kyoko, but it felt a bit too nice. But this isn't true for Danganronpa Zero, Ryoko Otonashi. She's a girl who suffers from extreme memory loss and forgets everything. She has forgotten her family, her friends, and she even forgot her own name. Also, she possesses the most broken ultimate talent a character could have. More than ultimate detective, more than ultimate hope. It's directly translated from Japanese, so it changes a bit. But from what I read, it is ultimate analyst or ultimate precognition. This might not sound as great until you see it in action. She is pretty much able to see a pattern for a short amount of time, and from that pattern, she could predict pretty much everything that's going to happen next. This makes her able to notice things such as being able to dodge the ultimate bodyguard's attacks like she's fucking Whis. It's amazing! Ryoko as a character is one who I just felt sorry for throughout the entire story, and is why I can say with high regard, this is the saddest Danganronpa has produced. Due to her memory loss, Ryoko is unable to do simple things such as remember where she is going, or why is she doing something. But the only thing she can always remember is her outward love for her childhood crush, the ultimate neurologist, Yosuke Matsuda. It feels a bit basic at first, as a typical airhead ex-tsundere ship, but when you look into her thoughts, and you really see how much she depends on Matsuda, he is the only constant in her life, and always tells herself when he fixes her memory, they can be together. Matsuda is literally everything that keeps her sane and bound to the world she's in, or else she is lost completely. On the other hand, Matsuda is such a great guy from his own point of view. He plays as the typical tsundere to Ryoko, but you see that is just merely due to how much he cares for her. Like how when he is tasked by the principal to investigate Kamakura, yes, emo Haji memes is in this as well, the moment Ryoko's name is brought up, he does everything he can so that he is able to save her from her own amnesia. This right here is the best Danganronpa ship by far. Better than Nigiri, better than Samitsu, better than anyone else. Or so I foolishly thought. One thing I haven't said about this story is Junko Enoshima, and how she is developed more than any other time in this series. Think about this, okay? Think about this. For a character who has caused the entire world to collapse on itself through grooming, manipulation, seduction, and going as far as to create 2 different killing games just for her own pleasure, she comes off as one of the most likable characters in the entire series, and is a standout in the Danganronpa community, just because of how likable she is from her fun personality. But holy shit, does this story show something else? This right here is the first time Danganronpa actually went into deep development of manipulation. We saw it when she groomed Mitarai, or even when Kokichi with Gonta, but this is the first time which it was a form of pure deception. I won't spoil the specifics, but the way in which Junko plays around her whole memory loss shtick and gets under Matsuda's skin is truly sickening. Needless to say, the amount of lies she feeds upon Ryuko, making her corrupt in despair, is something I haven't seen Enoshima do anywhere else. If you don't want to be spoiled on the ending, please go to this timestamp and continue watching, because, my god, I have to talk about it. They're gone? Okay. Holy fucking shit, that twist was so mad! For those who want to be spoiled, the Junko Enoshima that I have been rambling on about is not even Junko, but in fact imposter Junko, and the true Junko Enoshima comes out once Ryuko gains her memories in a not so nice way. Yeah, that's right, Ryuko's true identity is Junko Enoshima. She basically caused herself to get memory loss as a means of hiding herself within Hope's Peak, as the councils and everyone, just like the anime, tried to track her and get rid of her. So as a way of hiding in plain sight due to the reserve course killing game, she made Matsuda remove her own memories as the ultimate neurologist and changing her appearance wholly, whilst Ikusaba poses as her to deter the council from looking for her. This Attack on Titan level plot twist was brutal, and we see on how much Matsuda has done for Junko, from getting rid of the council members and hiding Kamakura until Mitarai finishes the despair-inducing videos. And what is even more brutal is the love Ryuko has for Matsuda is completely genuine, which shows that Junko actually cared for someone. All the love Ryuko has for Matsuda is true for Junko, which is even more brutal as how Matsuda tries to get rid of Ryuko because of what he has done. But it is too late. The damage has been done, and Junko no longer sees use for him anymore. We all know what that means. This right here is one of, if not the most saddest scenes in the whole series, as we hear on how much confusion and strife Matsuda was put through to save a person who was controlling him from the very beginning. He saw no point in carrying on anymore, as the person he truly loved and wanted to be with was never Junko but Ryuko, but he knew from the beginning it was all fake, but he couldn't help but care so much for her, only to be skewered by a knife to the stomach. This scene broke me, man. It shows the humanity Junko could have had through Ryuko. Yeah, that's right, Junko truly loved Matsuda, but once her memory returned, she knew that his job was completed, and she kills him just because of how much despair it would make her feel of losing her only true genuine love. You see on how much she's just kicking out of anger and strife, but it just gives so much despair, so it's just an addiction to her. If you thought Junko killing her sister in Game 1 was fucked up, you haven't seen shit in this light novel. If you haven't, please go check this out. I personally found it on Reddit by someone who has fan translated the whole thing, which again, thanks so much. You get to see all these amazing interactions with new characters and even old ones like Makoto, Kyoko, and even Mukuro. They all play a huge role in this story. I'm gonna be honest, this entry needs to be higher. Top 5, no, top 3. But I'll keep it just out of reach, just because of how this is a light novel and not an actual case. Okay, with all the extra stuff out of the way, it's all games from here. Here we are, the final case of Ultra Despair Girls. I know that this is gonna get me a lot of flack, but I do think that this finale is definitely warranted as one of the best chapters in the whole series. This case is funny enough, most like a traditional Danganronpa game, as there are less fighting and more story, and boy, the story is definitely remarkable. Coming off one of the worst cases in the whole series, I was mostly relieved that this game was finally going to be over, but I was never expecting the amount of depth put into this finale. The adults have finally decided to rebel against the psychotic children, and after that speech Komaru gave in the previous case, you definitely begin to notice a change in her character. From what was stapled as a hopeless girl that wanted to give up at every turn, she becomes a figure of hope to Towa City's rebellion, and it does, in my opinion, get you hyped for this final showdown. Albeit for a wrong reason. You ascend Towa Hills, the assumed headquarters of the Warriors of Hope, and here is where you actually are given key knowledge and depth to each child and how they succumb to what they are now. Just reading the notes of their parents strikes you with disgust, especially Kotoko and Nagisa. But there is one outlier in the children, being Monica. We get development that Monica is in fact adopted into the Towa family and looked up to Junko and Ishima like an idol and big sister, which caused her to create this child dystopia once Junko was defeated by Makoto. Her plan in the grand scheme is actually remarkable in my opinion, as she intends to make Komaru the successor to Junko and Ishima as a new ultimate despair, which is a way of 1. Maintaining the tragedy before Future Foundation gets involved, and 2. Making sure that Makoto has no way of interfering in any way, as Komaru and Makoto are siblings. It's an amazing plan, and what makes this even better is how she has ironed everything up until this point. And one specific scene truly presents the depth to this manipulation. Once you take the controller from Monica, you are given the choice on whether to break the controller or to not break it. For a lot of people, they just went and smashed it. But something felt very off to me once we were given it. Why is Monica being this submissive and acceptive of us shutting down the controller? Is there a layer we don't know about? So you decide to not break it and hesitate for a moment, and that's where Haiji bursts in
I'ma do my stuff
and demands the controller to be broken in order to bring the rampaging Monokumas to a stop. But once again, Monica is still being acceptive of us breaking the controller. This doesn't feel right, and still for a character who has caused all this destruction, just to let it happen? Then Kotoko runs in and demands we don't break the controller. Hold on, Kotoko was on our side. She swapped sides 15 minutes ago. What? What's going on? So you decide to not break it. And there it is up to you to piece everything together. The impacts of breaking the controller. And man, it gets kinda fucked. By destroying the controller, not only will it explode the rampaging Monokumas, but it will also explode the brainwashing masks that all the children are wearing, meaning that they all are involuntarily killing adults, their own parents and siblings without even knowing. They're just happily killing. And by destroying the controller, it would self-destruct the masks, in which in turn will blow up every kid in Towa City. This isn't the only problem though. With all the children suddenly dying by the time Future Foundation is able to enter Towa City, all the children would be dead. And when all the countries are notified of this tragedy, it would cause huge problems for Future Foundation, and would as a result maintain the tragedy which Junko and Ishima created. This is an amazing plan by Monica, and as even if you decide to not break the controller, you will still lose. Because remember on how Komaru gave that huge speech on fighting against the children? Well, should Komaru suddenly go back on her own word to not rebel, then it will cause people to go mad and still kill children anyway. But it will be futile due to how many Monokumas there are. Either way, Komaru loses no matter what decision she makes, which is why Monica calls her the successor to Big Sis Junko. Thankfully, it all works out somehow, as the giant Monokuma robot gets hijacked and you are able to suddenly take it down, Attack on Titan style. What I also do think is that UDG has a good ending, unlike other games. And the decision for Komaru to stay in Towa City is mature and fits her character for not being the hopeless little girl without her brother, and be independent for herself. But yeah, I really like the final case of Ultra Despair Girls. I know that this game gets a lot of hate, and I do have to jump on the hate wagon where I agree, but one thing, I do think that this does have a great finale, which I wish had a lot more to base it on. If other chapters were not just shoot, dialogue, shoot, and actually gave more depth to each character, such as the Warriors of Hope being more sympathetic, like how they kinda accidentally did with Kotoko, then yeah, this case would be higher. I have to give credit where it is warranted, because this actually got me to keep going through Danganronpa, despite on how terrible other cases were before it. And I'm glad! This case isn't perfect. There are definitely issues with this, such as
I'ma do my stuff. Why you trolling like a bitch? Ain't you tired?
But in this case in particular, these problems are minimal and don't fully take you out of the experience of Absolute Despair Girl, which is why I feel so guilty putting it outside of the top 5. But these next 5 cases are some of the best written, most engaging showstopper chapters which this series has to offer. When you think of Danganronpa, these next cases should be what every player thinks when it comes to this series. So let's cut the yapping and get to the 5 best Danganronpa cases of all time. The finale to Goodbye Despair is one of the most memorable moments in the entire series, and in my opinion, in contention for the best case. The reasoning behind this all hinged on Chapter 0 and how it threw everything for a loop after the 5th case of the game. This is where it all sums up to. You are given the final investigation segment being Hope's Peak Academy, the setting of Trigger Happy Havoc. And here you are given great detail about Future Foundation and behind the whole school field trip. Being able to see things such as the morgue and Alter Ego again was great fan service, and it really drove home as being the direct sequel to Game 1, a thing which V3 doesn't do well with regard to its final case. But we've mentioned that already. The core reason why this case is one of the best in the series is the class trial, which has some of the best moments, twists, and showdowns in the whole series. You start this class trial off by piecing together all the information provided, and you come to the judgment that this whole world that they're in is all a game.
Cause it's a game! Cause it's a game! Cause it's a game! Cause it's a game!
This was a great twist, even though it could have been executed better if Chapter 0 and events following didn't give it away so easily, but it never takes you out of the experience. This leads up to one of the best moments in the whole series, where everyone is left confused and are blaming Future Foundation for this. The pull-up of the century, Makoto Naegi shows up and gets shit sorted. The aura this guy has when he showed up easily sweeps us under our feet and we go to instantly take his side because of how much history we have with him, as he is the lead protagonist of the first game. And this is further supported with the next twist of this case being the identity of the Remnants of Despair. For those who don't know, why the fuck you here? Go play the game. The Remnants of Despair were strict followers of Junko Enoshima, who pretty much catalyzed the tragedy and allowed despair to spread so fast around the world. And the identity of such remnants is none other than all of us. All the people who participated in this killing game are all remnants of despair, and we idolize Junko to, well, just take a look at this.
We gonna go through it?
Some wasted
What is
away
that?
skin and bones through continuous fasting in order to reach the despair of starvation.
What are we doing right now?
Others gave their own families to Junko just to perform killing experiments on them.
This video gonna get demonetized, bro. If audio could get demonetized, bro, I would have been had my channel clapped. Community strike guideline, all types of stuff, bro.
Not just that. After Junko's death, they slaughtered countless people by forcing them to commit suicide.
That's not suicide, bro. That's a nigga with a gun bodying, bro.
One person even implanted one of Junko's eyes into their own socket. Perhaps they wanted to see her despair? And not just that, some even tried to have children with Junko's dead body.
This is one of the only times where I actually was caught off guard playing this game, and because of how out of the loop you are, you instantly follow Makoto's words. Until you realize that he's the bad guy. Hajime manages to find the contradiction in Makoto's statements, and that's where we see that the goat we just saw pull up was a fake, which was done by Monokuma to trick us into pressing graduate, which would cause everyone who is dead to be possessed by Junko. Speaking of Junko, she's here and she's fake Makoto's identity. And this is where this case goes from great to fantastic. Junko pulls up for the final showdown, where we see that she has uploaded herself as an AI by taking inspiration from Alter Ego, and she intends to create a society where she is the only constant, and she intends this by using the remnants of despair as mere vessels, mere livestock. This comes to the second most hype moment of this case, being the pull-up of not only real Makoto, but Kyoko and Byakuya to prevent them from graduating. Here we see that the Future Foundation's intentions with the Remnants of Despair was to purify them by using this game, the Neo World program, and the initial intention was to have Usami and Triaki monitor their rehabilitation, until Junko came along and fucked it all up. But don't worry, Future Foundation is here, and this can actually be a happy ending, right? Right? Well, that would be the case until Soda mentioned something that we haven't thought about.
If we do shut down the program, what will happen to us?
No need to worry. We won't let you get hurt.
It's not just that. We want a more detailed explanation.
If you shut down the Neo World program, everything within the program will be deleted. It will obviously delete Alter Ego Junko, along with your avatars here.
The supposed shutdown sequence, which they have set up to pull us out of the Neo World program, has the effect that all their consciousness and thoughts will be erased, and they will go back to being remnants of despair. All this work, all this strife from the killing game, seeing their friends die and betray one another only for it to be for naught, just to spite Junko's plan. But hey, what if they decide to graduate? That would mean that their friends would come back, right? And they can be conscious again, right? Well, yeah, except for the fact that if they do so, Junko would be uploaded to their dead friends' minds and would in turn cause a permanent tragedy, having their plan come into fruition completely. Either way, Haji Memes and the others would lose. They either choose the fate of the world, or choose their own lives, which they have grown to love because of the Neo World program. This no-win situation plagues everyone, especially Hajime, as the final twist comes in that while he may be a reserve corps student, he is also the subject and vessel for Izuru Kamukura, the ultimate life force, ultimate hope. And he has subjected to brain surgery to directly make him have every ultimate talent imaginable. Does Hajime really want to go back to a world where he was put under such inhumane experimentation? But also, does Hajime want to save a world who not only put him under such experimentation, but also would become a person that caused mass destruction like in Towa City?
Hey Chiaki, can you tell me something? Which choice should I make? My hope? The world's hope? Which one should I choose?
You guys are the only ones who have the right to decide your future. And the responsibility too.
So you're saying I should choose for myself?
But if you can't choose either future, why don't you just create one?
Create?
Even if this world is just a game, you guys aren't part of the game. You guys don't have to just choose a future. You should be able to create one as well.
Do you think someone like me can do that?
Since you're not part of the game, you don't have to worry about talent, skill, or level. You guys have a tremendous ultimate move that can overcome anything. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you just do it, things will turn out okay.
Thankfully, it all works out somehow in an Ultra Instinct transformation, as you decide to... you decide to... as you go to... Hajime said that he will create his own future, which means... Can't lie, it was extremely confusing what he meant by this. They did the shutdown sequence, but they're normal? And everyone is alive? This might be my only gripe with this case, and is why it isn't closer to number 1 or number 1 in of itself. I don't hate this ending by any means. It's certainly better than V3's ending, because it leans all the way into creating a resolve, unlike V3, where they destroyed all the world building and tried to make a sorry excuse of a grey area. And even though I don't understand it, I gotta respect it, as I would be very much lying if I wasn't smiling the entire time looking at this ending, with Makoto and all the others looking like men in black, and just seeing Hajime's resolved smile as the credits roll. I personally love this case. I know I said I don't think GD is the best game of the series, as how the quality was very gaudy and the characters were very on and off for me. But one thing I can say for certain is that the cases are by far the most consistently amazing. And what's so crazy about all this is, this isn't even the best case of the game. While I do think Danganronpa 0 is the saddest DR has been, I do think that V3 has the saddest case in the whole series, being the penultimate case. This chapter is definitely a fan favourite, and I feel extremely guilty holding it out of the top 3. Don't think I don't like this case, however, as it would not be high otherwise. For all the times anybody has gotten close to ending this killing game, this is by far the closest. Masterminded by Ultimate Supreme Leader Kokichi Miu. The fourth case of this game really cemented a distaste for Kokichi for me, as how he used Gonta to kill Miu. two of my favorite characters, and I felt his heel turn was a bit forced compared to Nagito, who was always a crazy rival. Kokichi just felt a lesser Nagito to me coming to the end of 3-4. However, he went from being a disliked character of mine to one of my favorite characters of all time because of this case alone. It starts off with everyone escaping. Wow, that was easy. Except for that everything is all hell. And Kokichi admits that apparently he is the mastermind?
Are you sure about that?
In preparation for a final fight with Kokichi, Maki teaches Kaito how to assemble the crossbow, and this right here is my favorite use of dual motifs, as it directly reflects the first case of the game, which was also a case in an attempt to take down the mastermind. However, Kaito gets kidnapped by the Exisals, and it is up to us to rescue him. Maki starts straight tweaking, desperate to bring Kaito alive, and you can't just help but adore them together. And just like DR0, you really want there to be no problems, but you know there will be problems because, well, it's bloody Danganronpa. Of course something's gonna go wrong. Also, can I just say, this is Himiko's best appearance in the series, and you gotta kind of feel bad for her. Like, apart from the first case, she has been interwoven into each case in the unluckiest way possible. She was framed in case 2, was framed again in case 3, and had both her friends die in a span of 20 minutes. She indirectly caused the Gonta's memory loss in case 4, which in turn may have caused him to go rogue in the first place, and she gave the crossbow to Kaito in case 5, which in turn frames herself as the blackened in this case. She can't catch a break, dude. What makes this case get as high as it is, it's the emotion in this class trial. Kaito gets killed under the hydraulic press, no surprise, and everyone truly believes that it is Kokichi who killed him. He is the only one in the Exisal hangar, and he just admitted to being the mastermind. No matter how much you want to believe that Kokichi is the killer, you know this isn't going to be that straightforward. The night before the rescue mission, Maki decided to go alone to save Kaito. Due to her status as the ultimate assassin, she felt the absolute need to make herself useful. She enters the hangar via the Exisal, only to find Kaito shooting Kokichi with a crossbow. And when it came to Maki about to kill Kokichi with a poison-tipped arrow, Kaito jumps in the way. Maki runs to get the antidote for the poison, only to find the Exisal hangar closed back up. Maki throws the antidote through the bathroom window to save Kaito, only for Kokichi to intercept and drink it himself. This in turn makes Maki the actual killer of this case, as she accidentally poisoned the one she loved. Maki is by all means one of, if not the best character when it comes to character development. I know that's a high standard considering there are characters such as Nagito, Hajime's, and Shuichi, but playing V3 again really shows how much time they put into making her character such a tragic one. She felt the need to become an assassin to make ends meet for her home orphanage, and the act of killing people made her feel as if that was her true purpose in life. She was never given any sympathy or even a second look at because her job was so unethical. But when Kaito came into her life, she was at first so confused and irritated by his blind faith. But the fact that Kaito didn't care on what she has done and only cared for Maki, flaws and all, is why she got so attached, even though it was a killing game. So when it comes to Kaito's life in danger, and Kokichi saying that he was the mastermind, as well as probing her at every turn, Maki believed that since killing people is literally what she is useful for, she felt she has to kill Kokichi without help. Fun fact, this even mirrors Shukxchi's love for Kaede in ways, as Shukxchi also believed that his whole purpose was to expose people and have a cold demeanor similar to Kyoko. But Kaede had so much blind faith in him, which again is why he got so attached. But in fact, this is only the second layer to this murder, as due to circumstances, Kokichi devises a plan with Kaito where Maki will be saved from becoming the Blackened by creating an unsolvable murder. He does this by first faking to drink the antidote beforehand and giving it to Kaito, saving him. Then they tampered with the security cameras to make it look like Kaito was indeed crushed under the hydraulic press, but it was in fact Kokichi. This created a murder scene in which, without knowing who is inside the Exisal during the class trial, we have no way who died. This goes as far as Monokuma himself not even knowing who is the killer, because the Exisals kept him away from the hangar and the cameras were tampered with. So it's up to Shukxchi to pull the truth right out of his ass, Phoenix Wright style. Nothing can compare to the level of emotion in this case, like Maki, who is consumed by guilt, does everything she can to get Kaito killed, even if she thought that she was the one who killed Kaito. You can tell on how Kaito is the first person to truly accept Maki for who she was, but she is so consumed by guilt and hates herself for being the ultimate assassin that she denies at every possibility that he is alive. And Kaito, God, what an amazing character, bro. I haven't talked about him, but just as a plain point, he is one of my favorite characters in the whole series, just because of how much blind faith he has and brings everyone together. And Kokichi, I know I said I didn't like him in the fourth case, but he well makes up for that here. The way he feels the need to live his whole life as a lie, just so he can make himself feel better and get closer to ending the killing game, even if it meant lying to himself, is just deep and not the tragedy I was expecting. This is bar none the most emotional case in the whole series, because of how well established each character is in their own way, and is one of the specific reasons why I hold V3 in such a high regard. The characters which they build up are the best written in the series has to offer, with an exception to a select few in other games. But nevertheless, this is only number 5, because I think other cases are a bit better. Emphasis on bit, though. Whether you hate him or not, Nagito Komaeda is one of the most impactful characters and interesting characters in the series. The idea of a corrupt, dystopian version of Makoto as the main rival is in of itself an interesting concept. And this is backed up with how he in fact actively tries to help killers in each case, such as the first one. However, after case 4, you get the feeling that he knows a lot more than he lets on, due to how much of a heel turn he had upon everyone and his investigation segment in that case. And this all culminates into the 5th case, which is without a doubt one of the best cases in the whole series. It begins off in exploring the final island, and already you notice a change in Nagito's mood, with how he has disappeared. And when you get times to see him, he's extremely vague and hides his motives behind everything he's doing. Just witnessing his conversation with Monokuma about he's waiting for someone on this island makes you feel so out of the loop and of everything. What was inside that file he got from the final dead room? For a character who literally has dementia and brain cancer, having his brain disintegrating at an exponential rate, He's pretty fucking smart, dude. Because of how suspicious Nagito is being, you all decide to capture him and tie him up like in the second case. Only this time it's different.
What are you doing? Don't judge us for this, but we're gonna tie you up. Tie me up? There's no use struggling! But I'm not struggling. Huh? What the hell? You're being strangely cooperative. Who cares? Just tie him up before it's too late! You guys are really disappointing. How long are you going to continue behaving so short-sightedly? You gotta look at the big picture, you know. Huh? What are you talking about? It's fine if you don't understand. You can just see the end without knowing. Now then, let's begin! The beginning of the end of Jabberwock Island! It's amazing! These amazing fireworks surely befit the beginning of the end! It's over. This is the end. The killings are done for good.
Nagito, after playing a Death Note level Uno reverse, claims that he has hidden the bombs that were on the final island somewhere and he will detonate them unless if the traitor comes out front. Holy crap! The tables had suddenly turned and now you are disappearing trying to find the bombs until you realize that it was all a diversion. A diversion which sets up the most gruesome murder in the entire series, no contest. Just look at that, dude. Somebody had tortured Nagito to death. And it's apparently one of us. But nobody would go as near to think of this type of level of pain upon him. Sure, Akane tried to use force, but by no means to this length. So you begin the class trial, and you begin to piece together what actually happened in that room. Monokuma cutouts were laid in a domino effect, which caused an igniter to set the whole place on fire at the final cutout. We went to throw the fire extinguishing cans to put it out, but it didn't work for some reason, which when it was put out due to the sprinklers, we saw that. Surely someone had to have done this to him. There was literally a spear right through his stomach. Well, what if I told you that person who did it was Nagito himself? The fact that this was indeed a suicide is absurd to think about, but it was possible in the most fucked up way. This guy tied himself up, hoisted a spear over the ceiling rail, still attached, slashed himself with a knife using tape to hide his screams of pain, used a Monokuma plush to slam his palm on a propped up knife, and when it came to the fire ensuing, he let go of the spear and plunged his stomach with it, killing him. This guy is fucked up. And you know what? He didn't even die from that. Now this leads into the second half of this trial, being the identity of the traitor. Remember, Nagito's motive was to fish out the traitor, which he does so using his own life. And remember how the fire cans did not work when they were thrown? Well, this is because Nagito, prior to his plan, laced the cans with poison, which he got from the octagon, and when they were thrown, it killed him, which made him drop the spear and plunged into his stomach. And the icing on the cake is that Nagito only laced one can and banked on his status as the ultimate lucky student that the one who threw the deadly can was indeed the traitor. This literally creates an unsolvable murder which nobody can solve, as there were no traces of the killer that killed him, as it was all by accident due to Nagito's plan. And I gotta say, the writing when it comes to this reveal, bro, it was as if Oda himself was writing this case.
But they couldn't help it. Even if they wanted to reveal themselves, they couldn't do it because they weren't created to do that.
Chiaki?
What's wrong, Chiaki? Get a hold of yourself! That's why I want you guys to guess.
You want us to guess?
Yeah, I want you to guess.
What? What does that mean?
Who do you think it is, Hajime? Who do you think the future Foundation sent to infiltrate your group as the traitor?
Why?
A traitor who's not allowed to think that they're different from everyone else.
Why?
A traitor who can only interact with everyone as a traitor.
Why?
Because that's the nature of their existence. They can only exist as a traitor.
Seriously, why?
Who do you think is the traitor? Hajime, please.
Chiaki Nanami, the ultimate gamer, is revealed to be the traitor. The character who was the most likable in the game so far because she played sort of a Kyoko role. She is the traitor and you are left confused and heartbroken. Chiaki has so much hope for you that it's up to you to prove that she is the traitor right out your ass and that Nagito's death was caused by her, even though it was by accident, on which nobody knew about. I said this in the Despair arc, but I didn't really care much for her playing this for the first time. But definitely during the second playthrough of the game after watching the anime, this hits hard on so many levels. It's later revealed in Case 6 that Chiaki is in fact an android made by the Neoworld program, intended to monitor our rehabilitation, which makes this even sadder in my opinion, because her whole purpose was to keep us alive and hold our friendships together. I absolutely love the 5th case of Goodbye Despair, so much that I do think it trumps even the finale of the game. I know this case is widely regarded as DR's best case, and I absolutely see where they're coming from. It has tension, it has emotion, it has some of the greatest twists, and it sets up Chapter 0 so well. But you can only be number 3 for a reason. The final case of Trigger Happy Havoc is bar none the best case in the whole game and is one of the best cases of the entire series. This was actually my favourite case for the longest time and is for great reason. This case truly felt the ending of an amazing game, but also the beginning of something far bigger and an introduction to the Danganronpa universe. I mentioned that the 5th case of the game was not amazing, but for the reason that it and this case are joined, and without the participation of the finale, it falls short. However, once the setup has been complete, this case delivers. After being avoided to be executed, Makoto is rescued by Kyoko, who throughout the previous case has been acting extremely suspicious and definitely knows a lot more, but has no way or time to deliver it. Until now. We get to know her more and how she became the ultimate detective, and her reasoning for attending Hope's Peak in the first place, alongside her massive spite against her father for abandoning her and the Kirigiri clan's duty. This already adds so much to her character, and then during this final investigation segment, she was just given a present, which is supposed to be by her father. It was his bones. Jeez, Monokuma, that's cold! That's hella cold! This is where her character really comes out, as we can see that her father truly did love her, but because of, him and Kyoko's own spite, he never was able to express that affection. Also, did you know that the opening execution to the game is actually Jin Kirigiri being executed before us? It's crazy noticing details such as these on a second time through. Speaking of which, this investigation is one of the best in the whole series, as it truly feels like you are getting closer to this truth and uncovering the reasoning behind the killing game, as many rooms are now opened up, such as the control room. Just the fact that Hina was able to control Monokuma just for a moment, hijacking the controls, and the fact that the mastermind was literally under that trapdoor when you entered, makes this so good. If y'all were able to open up that trapdoor, you could have easily exposed the mastermind right then and there. Speaking of the mastermind, let me know in the comments when on your first playthrough, who did you think the mastermind was? I personally thought it was Hiro, because there's no way a guy that high is that dumb. Or it was going to be some crazy twist like it was like Makoto or something. Well, it turns out the one orchestrating this entire killing game and the one who trapped us all in the school is indeed Junko Enoshima, the ultimate fashionista. She was supposedly meant to be dead as she was killed by Monokuma in case 1 after Sayaka's death, but not only was that not Junko, but it was in fact the ultimate soldier, which we thought was killed in the 5th case of the game. This all is delivered in the first half of this final class trial, which while I think it is the weaker half of this trial, it does not mean that it is bad at all. Prior to this killing game, Junko and Mukuro switched places and had Mukuro cosplay as Junko to avoid suspicion. They were initially the two masterminding all this as the Despair Sisters, for reasons you will see in a moment. But when it came to the final investigation, Junko straight up killed her out of nowhere, betraying her as a result. Once again, if you replay the first case, you can see this foreshadowing, as Mukuro says something rather unusual before she dies. This links directly into the 5th case, where as a means of trying to get rid of Kyoko herself, Junko uses her own sister's corpse and frames it like she had died recently, thus making it look like Kyoko killed her. This is where the 5th case gets resolved, as the true killer to Mukuro Ikusawa is in fact the mastermind Junko Enoshima. So that's it, right? Nope! There's still plenty more to go! Once Junko comes out of hiding, you immediately are completely taken aback by her eccentric personality. It's almost as if she had multiple personalities, which makes this even more chaotic. You have to go on to discover the true secret to this killing game and Hope's Peak Academy, using every truth bullet you have and thinking back to every case prior. And what's the final secret? The world's gone to shit. Yup, apparently the entire fucking world had just collapsed on itself by Junko and Mukuro, having numerous world wars between countries and everything just all destroyed now. So why this killing game? Well, it turns out that the one who locked all the students in Hope's Peak Academy was indeed ourselves, as a mean of protecting ourselves from the tragedy. But little do we all know that the one causing all this is in fact one of these students. And the whole killing game's purpose was to shatter what's left of the final piece of hope to humanity by making them all kill each other. Holy crap. This leaves the final decision to us all, and that whether do we want to leave and go to this dystopian world, or stay in the school alongside the ultimate despair. And Junko makes it all the more convincing to us, having even Kyoko be in doubt. But when it all seems lost, leave it to the GOAT Makoto Naegi to come in clutch and save everyone. We go to fire hope into all of our friends, which leads to the best moment in the entire series and the most impactful scene, the defeat of Junko Enoshima. By giving hope that the outside world would not be as bad and they can build humanity back up from this despair, we trump Junko's plan to keep us forever by having the blind faith into the future. This moment was so hype. I cannot explain enough of it. With the main music playing and Junko left flabbergasted whilst Kyoko crowns us as the ultimate hope, makes this the best moment of the entire series. And for good reason, as without Makoto's optimism, nothing after would have happened. DR2, UDG, the anime, none. Even V3 wouldn't have happened if you think about it, as if people didn't love the final showdown, no more killing games would have happened. Trigger Happy Havoc is definitely my second favourite game of the series, and the finale pulls off the best showstopper twist and trial in my opinion. Actually, you might differ on the opinion of it having the best twist, and you can certainly make a case for that, especially when you refer to... So throughout this whole list, I have been saying that V3 is my favourite game of the whole series. And while I keep this stance, this list doesn't really show that much. And it's simply due to how the cases in this game fall a little short. But that is all because of how the first game of the entire game is one of the best in the entire series, let alone my favourite case. The introduction case to Killing Harmony had a lot riding on its shoulders, as it had to reintroduce everything after the conclusion of the anime, while still being engaging enough to veteran players and new ones. Danganronpa intro cases have quite a bad reputation, as they often feel extremely rushed and very simple in their case building, such as 11037 and Teru being characters who have nothing but weirdo to their names. But there is one exception. Danganronpa V3, My Class Trial, Our Class Trial. This has no right to be so good, and it is the sole responsibility for why a lot of people don't favour V3, because of how high this bar was set for each consecutive case going forth. Playing as ultimate pianist Kaede Akamatsu, you are finally once again transported into a school killing game, which honestly is not a bad introduction. Where 2-1 fails due to its rushed nature of just blurting out the killing game to everyone and the traitor, which ruins any form of suspense, 3-1 actually takes its time in building the introduction. This might sound like a bad thing, but it only makes this case even better, as it takes time for its foreshadowing and never pulls you out of the experience at any point. One of the best forms of foreshadowing in this case is Kaede herself. She already makes herself known and way more likable than any other protagonist. Where Makoto is cowering or feeling awkward around people, or Hajime just being annoyed by Nagito's shenanigans, and Kamaru, well, has nobody to actually talk to. Kaede plays off every character so well, like her undying trust to Shuichi to do the right thing, or even having a brother-sister-like relationship with Kokichi. But something feels very off with Kaede. If she is this confident already, then what sort of development will she get later? This leads on to Monokuma's motive for this case, and can I say this might be my favourite motive in the whole series? Monokuma basically places a timer on everyone that if a murder doesn't happen in the next 3 days, he'll straight up execute everyone. This by nature makes this a better motive than 1-1, which was an act of desperation, and 2-1, where there was no actual motive, aside from just, well, Nagito. It kicks the killing game right into high gear suspension, so as a means of preventing the killing game from happening, Shuichi comes up with a plan alongside Kaede to kill the mastermind before the killing game even starts. This leads to the second best form of foreshadowing, being Shuichi Saihara. Shuichi, despite being known as the ultimate detective, and how much that status is placed in high regard, as seen with Kyoko or even Yue from the Kirigiri light novel series, the role of detectives is often much more leading and stoic compared to others. But in Shuichi's case, it's a bit different. He's soft-spoken, afraid of exposing the mastermind due to his confidence in his judgments, not being confident at all. Not only does Kaede encourage him in this remark, but it also plays great character in later cases, as without Kaede's confidence rubbing off on him, he would not be able to expose the crimes in later cases. We can see this exactly in the final case of the game, as he acts a lot more like Kaede in that trial, having the gusto to go to lengths to expose the mastermind, but still have undying trust in his friends. Shuichi might be my favourite character in the whole series, let alone being the best protagonist because of how much development he has throughout the game, unlike any other protagonist. Which is saying something because you don't play as him in this case. As a matter of fact, you are completely led on a path where Shuichi is set up to be the killer of this case. After discovering the victim, which throws yet another curveball in the Danganronpa formula, your expectations are completely led to believe that Shuichi will be the culprit, just because of how other intro cases were like. Where the partner in game 1 being Sayaka, who was the first victim, and the second game, Nagito, being the causes for the culprit to commit the crime, it makes complete sense and is extremely likely that in the third game, the assistant is the true culprit of the crime. And that nearly happens. Emphasis on nearly. Remember when I said that Kaede had undying trust in our ace detective? Well, this is not wholeheartedly a good thing, as Kaede came up with her own plan to parallel Shuichi's plan. Because of the motive counting down, Kaede thought it was necessary for the mastermind to be executed before the killing game began. And seeing how well Shuichi's plan was thought out, made her believe that it was a perfect opportunity in of itself to kill the mastermind, so the killing game wouldn't occur. However, when it comes to pass that Shuichi's plan of exposing the mastermind failed, it dominoed on Kaede's plan on failing as well, leading to one of the biggest revelations in the entire series, and my personal favourite.
Well, this is as far as it goes. I couldn't do it. I couldn't get to the mastermind. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry, Rantaro. I'm sorry, Shuichi.
The protagonist of the game, the main character, you are the blackened in the murder of Rantaro Amami. Even though your efforts were with good morals, it's you. You fought so hard to defend Shukxchi in not being the culprit, going as far as to lie in the non-stop debate. Albeit that Kaede is terrible at lying. But at the end, led to the truth that you are the cause for the killing game starting. This leads to the famous switch in protagonists, as now the tables have turned, and now you play as Shukxchi. Instantly, you both feel the despair set in as you both figure out the shocking truth, which you ought to expose for everyone's sake. What I really like replaying this case is how, unlike 2-1, where there is only one way to look at it, as Teruteru just wanted to protect everyone, there are so many ways to look at this case. Whether you take Kaede's side, you can say that she didn't do anything wrong, as she just wanted to end the killing game and place her trust in Shukxchi. But on the other hand, you can take Shukxchi's side and say he didn't know of Kaede's trap and thus be responsible for her doings. Either way, it doesn't matter, as no matter how you look at it, you are at fault. Sumitsu is a very tragic relationship. It may not be as sad as Ryuko and Matsuda's relationship, but definitely more despair-inducing and impactful to all cases going forth. You get to see both minds of both protagonists and how they trust one another, or you can say on how their chemistry is what caused the despair of this case. If Shukxchi never trusted Kaede, she would not have interfered with the trap. But at the same time, if Kaede never trusted in Shukxchi, the trap would not have even come into fruition to begin with. It's impossible to have one without the other, which is why this case is gut-wrenching as it gets. Even at her dying moments, Kaede trusts Shukxchi that he will put an end to the killing game and expose the mastermind, which does nothing but shake you to the very core. My class trial, our class trial, is by all means my favourite case in the whole series. I hear a lot of players say negatives about this case, namely that Kaede shouldn't have died and kept being the protagonist. Which I have to say, obviously, she wasn't even the one who bloody killed him. But also, Kaede dying not only sets up a great standard for Shukxchi, but also leaps his character arc in a much more engaging way than any other protagonist. Sayaka was a good twist for Makoto's character, but she didn't do a whole lot for the rest of the game. This is definitely not the case for Kaede, as her will is played as a huge motif throughout the game, from making friends with Kaito, to the effigy and Anji's murder, right till the final case of the game. I also hear that because of this twist, it is the reason why every consecutive case feels underwhelming, except for a few. But that ain't the fault of this case. 3-1's job was to establish the killing game, engage us with characters to make us want to keep playing. And it delivers in spades. And the ending is one of the most emotional moments in the whole series, as it still leaves you in disbelief, as there are so many questions about the case. Why did the bookshelf close? Was Kaede's shot put stunt that effective? And what does this mean for cases going forth? I wish that the ending lived up to this standard, as it cleared up all discrepancies of this case, but at the same time, left out way too many plot holes, and had a twist which makes the writing of Kaede being the blackened almost as if they're two different games playing. Is this the only reason why V3 is my favourite game? No. V3 has the best cast, the setup of the game as a whole is better built, and the design and overall theme is the best. But what I will say though, is that if this case was not so amazing as it is, I would not have had a second look at it and come to this conclusion. I got into the Danganronpa series in a very unique time where I had just finished the Ace Attorney series after 3 whole years of playing it. I was for sure thinking that the best game of the year I have played would be by all means the great Ace Attorney Resolve, as it was my favourite game of that series, and it had an amazing finale. But never would I have thought that the series I would start right after trumped that thought, with how amazing the plot and characters are. Danganronpa was an amazing series which I wished kept going like the Ace Attorney series. But I understand why the writer wanted to end things, with how the anime concluded the tragedy plot, and V3 acted as a final love letter to fans for the support. I really wish that I have played these games at the height of their popularity to see everyone's reactions at the time of its release. But I'm glad I played these games nevertheless. There are a lot of medias of Danganronpa which I haven't talked about yet, for example the mangas and short stories, but I felt that a lot of fans have not read them, unlike the anime and light novels which I see have been talked about somewhat. Side note, Togami light novel and the Mukuro light novels would be on this list. However, Togami hasn't been translated from what I have found, and I haven't read DR What If yet. But it isn't like the fandom has decreased completely. I have seen so many fan games being made in the works, such as Project Eden's Garden and the YouTube series Danganronpa, which I find extremely engaging despite their small communities. Also, did you all see that new game which the devs are making, 100 Line Last Defense Academy? It's really funny that after V3, Kodaka made it very apparent that he hates Danganronpa now, but then proceeds to only make Danganronpa stuff like Raincoat and this. Nevertheless, I'm 100% playing it. No, let me know in the comments if you want to see a review on it. Oh man, this is a very long video. Definitely the longest video on this channel and the most ambitious. I'm not expecting this video to do well. After all, this is a ranking of a whole video game series, but nevertheless, I felt the need to talk about it, and is the reason why I'm making this ranking. You may love the first case of GD. I know somebody who does. And you may be a lot more harsher on UDG. I know somebody who does. And you may hate the first case of Killing Harmony. I don't know anyone who does. But what I love about this community is that everyone has different opinions, and no case in this series is truly terrible. There are at least one good thing about each chapter in my opinion, and what the other medias are definitely worth to be credited. Maybe except Ultra Despair Girls. But anyway, this has been a very long video, so I would like to ask everyone who hasn't played these games to do so. These have some of the best storytelling I have seen in a while. Also, please like and subscribe and comment below if you want to see more Danganronpa. I still have a lot I want to discuss, like a better dissection of the Kirigiri light novel series, so please comment below if you want to see that. Alright, with that, thank you all so much for sticking to the end, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a damn good one.